Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome you to the airwaves of Radio Islam International this Wednesday morning. It's gone 12 minutes past the hour of 9. The name is Ahmed Waja. I am sitting in for Maulana Muhammad Bam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him complete shifa. Again, it's a great honor for me today to be on this program and to host our very senior scholar, Ml Zahier Ragie. Maulana takes our time from his very busy schedule, and Maulana each week Maulana comes and Maulana enlightens us with Maulana's knowledge and Maulana's wisdom and beautiful advices that Maulana takes out for us, obviously taken out and chalked out for us from the noble Quran and from the blessed Sunnah hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's welcome Maulana to the program. Zahier Ahmed, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Maulana Ahmed. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Allah reward you also for the time that you take out, and may Allah accept all our efforts for His Mubarak Deen. Inshallah.
Ameen.
We also take this opportunity of greeting our listeners on Radio Islam, Radio Al Ansar, and all those who have joined us on the Ummahat platform. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah so much for those kind and beautiful, encouraging words. Maulana, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you in abundance. The program is a very enlightening program. It's a very informative program, and it's something that needs to be heard. It's something that needs to be said. Some people will disagree. Some people will disagree in different ways, but it's certain things that needs to be said. As I said earlier, these are advices that are taken, that are chalked out, that are extracted from the beautiful Quran, the beautiful Sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from the teachings of our pious ulama, our pious elders, our seniors. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq to benefit from these programs, from these advices. And obviously, there is the intention in which we should be listening to these advices. Don't listen to it with the intention that I want to see what point I can pull out, what this one said wrong, what that one said wrong. Let us look, let us reflect at our own lives, and let us see how we can be impacted by these advices, how we can benefit from these advices. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me also the tawfiq and the ability, the inspiration to do so, and grant us all the same. A very interesting topic. Well, the program Echo Chambers, it's a very, very enlightening topic that Maulana has been discussing for quite a few weeks now. Today we move on with the discussion. It's actually, well, to be honest, it's actually a continuation from last week's discussion, Age of Rage, but today on a slightly different topic, trial by social media. That is what Maulana has chosen to call the program today, trial by social media. Now, Maulana, if you very quickly, before we go into the questions that we're going to pose to Maulana, just as a very quick recap. So last week, Maulana spoke about, when we are guilty of complacency. So, for instance, there are differences that we have. The noble thing to do, the honorable thing to do is to be patient, and, we endure the differences that we have. We are patient with one another. There is the beautiful advice and there is the beautiful teaching that we have received. So that is basically a recap of the program that we have done last week. Anything, Maulana, you want to add to that recap before we pose the questions to you?
Yes, basically, I think that's sufficient because we had lengthy discussions prior to this. And it all, it fits into the broader discussion that we are having. And, as much as we say we need to be patient, we also need to know that, and we discussed this previously, the occasions when we need to call out the wrongs. And when are we guilty of complacency? So in the sense that I am, when should we be calling out evil actions? And this is something that we spoke at length in not last week, but the previous week. And I also said last week and in our discussion that in the environment that the Ummah is today, we are far more in need of building what's absent, which is the good, than the unfair and uninformed judgments of people's actions.
Right, true. That's very, very, very true. There is the reality of it, unfortunately, which is very, very sad. Instead of building, instead of, resolving the differences, unfortunately, it's just getting worse. And obviously, a lot of it is because of the unfair, the uninformed judgment that people want to make on their own. Everybody becomes attorney, everybody becomes lawyer, everybody becomes judge. And, The world is an open court for anybody to judge whoever they want, however they want. And that is why this ummah is degrading. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us and guide us to that which is pleasing to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So moving on with the program today, unfortunately, what we just said now, that is the reality. Today, what we're witnessing is, the most unfair trial that anybody could ever imagine. It is public punishment of wrongdoing. Somebody does something wrong, and that also, just because it appears wrong to me, it looks like it's wrong to me, it sounds like it's wrong to me, it might not be completely wrong, but because it is against what I feel is right, then what happens is public punishment in front of everybody on every platform possible. We go and vent our anger, give our opinions, and that is obviously very, very unfair. Naming, shaming, not considering the repercussions that this is going to have. I mean, should a group of believers witness, what happens, what gives them the right to then go forward and express their own views and their own opinions? And the very interesting question together with that is, do people really need to know each and single minute detail of what has happened?
Yes, and as we said, Maulana, that we spoke when we are guilty of complacency. So, for instance, there are differences that we have. We should be patient. We should just endure the differences. Is that what is required of Sharia? And these are things that we spoke of. And let's continue with our discussion. Sometimes it becomes very difficult just to understand the aspect that we are discussing just from this one episode, which is our 8th episode. So, and we did speak previously, and I just want to just make mention of that, and that is that sometimes a person may say that I am not active on social media, yet my talks, and I address myself first, my talks or short clips from my talks are posted on social media, and that talk of mine or that short clip of mine, which is posted on social media, becomes viral, not realizing that much that I'm saying perhaps is just a half truth. It's a misrepresentation of the entire discussion that someone had or something that someone did. So, irrespective whether I am active or I'm not, my clips are going around on social media, and I indirectly am also guilty of these echo chambers that we are talking of. So, when are we meant, and that's what we discussed yesterday, when are we meant to call something out? Now, Marana, observe, we are saying something and not someone. And there is a major difference, and we need to keep that in mind. When are we meant to call something out and not someone? Now, the discussion today is trial by social media. Right. The court of public opinion. And Mara, you can come in whenever you want to as we're discussing. And our listeners can also mention if there's things that we say which perhaps may seem or sound incorrect. Please do help us. So, talking about the court of public opinion, and this is the most incoherent court imaginable. And so that would be my short response to this question of public shaming. And this is not from our deen. There are small exceptions to this, yes, and we've discussed those exceptions in our previous discussions. And someone may say, wait a minute, but in the Quran, there is this concept of flogging the fornicator. Isn't that also public shaming? And a person could argue. And there are people that argue and bring these types of arguments forward when we're talking about public shaming. That the Quran, subhanallah, talks about the concept of flogging a fornicator. Is that not public shaming? So, in a sense, there is some shame involved, But let's look at that aspect also, the whole concept and ideology and the philosophy of public flogging. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam actually said, observe this prescribed punishment, but don't chastise, so you are doing this for the greater good of society. And the maxim is the application of the punishment, not the actual unrestricted shaming. The purpose of that is the application of a punishment and not unrestricted shaming. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said this. So, even a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we've given this example in one of our previous discussions. He comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the man that committed zina, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's reaction towards him initially was that perhaps you did not. So he said to him, I fornicated. And Rasulullah turned away from him. He came again, and Rasulullah said, and he said, I fornicated. And then Rasulullah said, maybe you kissed. And he was trying to dismiss him. He was being dismissive of this, because if you think about the punishment of fornication, just as a case study, who in the world can convict someone? It has never happened in Islamic history with 4 witnesses, that all 4 saw the exact same thing, because like they are going to get cross-referenced. What color was the vase on the dress? Everything, you can't just say we saw something. So it's there to deter society from going down the so-called porn route, to basically publicizing it. And so why didn't you try to conceal him? The concept of observe the prescribed punishment, but don't chastise them. This is the most important concept in this hadith. Prescribe the punishment, but don't just chastise them. Don't condemn them for it. It's about getting society to climb out of these things. So on the one hand, they could normalize it with the rest of society if you shame out and publicize. And on the other side, you are making it too hard for a person to be redeemed. So in this incident that I just mentioned, we do know, and we've mentioned this previously, that after the punishment was actually, meted out to the person, and the person passed away, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam heard 2 Sahaba, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'een, criticizing the man that why did he expose himself? And look at the type of punishment that has been meted out to him, and so forth. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam thereafter passed by a dead animal carcass, and Rasulullah called for those 2 people, and he said to them, eat of this, the speaker and the one that was listening. Meaning you had no right to talk about him despite the punishment being meted out. So that's the beauty of our deen. There is this beautiful, Chimar, you want to come in?
No, you can carry on.
There is this beautiful statement of Imam Ahmad, rahimahumullah, on calling people out. He was asked about a man who is known to be evil, a man who is known to be vile, and they asked, should we tell the world about him? So Imam Ahmad responded, subhanallah, what a profound statement of wisdom. He said, conceal him unless they are a da'iyah, calling towards it. Now, this is so interesting, unless they are a da'iyah. So some people may have misunderstood this and thought that da'iyah meant a caller to Islam. And that's how we use the term, right? A caller, a da'iyah, like someone in dawah. So we need to publicize. Exactly. So now you only need to call people out who are in dawah. No, it does not mean that. The da'iyah that Imam Ahmed mentioned here does not mean that. It means an invitee to that evil. So unless they are advocating for the evil that they are committing, then you call it out. Not just
Right.
anyone that is in the field of da'wah. Unless they are advocating for the evil, and this is rebellion. So to differentiate, and it's important, it's very important. I think it's very important that people understand that allow people to be redeemed. Sometimes we go to such extent of public shaming and bickering and gossiping, and the entire community comes to know about some evil that a man has or a woman has committed, that the person actually feels that he is lost. He is not able to be redeemed. You know, it's so important that we understand that we allow people to be redeemed. Every single individual, irrespective of the crime that they have committed, is redeemable, despite their circumstances, despite their sins. Allah Ta'ala constantly accepts the tawbah. But the repentance of people, and if we shame them to the extent that they have no more chance with Allah, my biggest fear and our biggest fear is, what if they really believe you that they are no more redeemable? What if they believe you? And I feel for these people on the day of judgment. You know, people that go out of public shaming everybody. I actually feel for these people on the day of Qiyamah, like the way they've tried people in this world. Would they like that for themselves on the day of Qiyamah? Would you like Allah to hold you to such scrutiny that you hold others to? The fact that you are checking their every move, their every syllable, their every statement, unpacking it. I mean, you begin to unpack the statements of others. Every statement, unpacking it, trying to literally get the worst out of what they could have possibly meant, trying to get out what they could have possibly meant. You know, and then, you know, we spoke about this, that find 70 reasons and excuses for the actions and speeches of people in order to save them from the wrong. But unfortunately today we find 70 excuses to criticize people. And then where is this whole concept of covering others so that Allah covers you? A correlation that he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever conceals, Allah conceals. Whoever forgives is forgiven by Allah. And so we are going to continue call out evil. We can call out evil as evil. In fact, the Quran, you know, from among the great wisdoms of the Quran, Subhanallah, you know, this is it's so profound, brother. From the great wisdoms of the Quran is that it did not mention all the opponents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by name. It only mentioned one of them, and that is Abu Lahab, for a very specific reason. But the vast majority, the default of the Quran, it mentioned what they were saying, what they were doing, right? And it mentioned what was wrong with what they were saying. It did not call out the people by names. Unfortunately, today, we go out on the public forums and we actually make mention of people's names. If a person actually believes you that they can't be redeemed, then you've actually destroyed them. And there is also the saying, whoever says that people are doomed, not redeemable, then they are the most doomed of people. Another narration says, because he's the one that doomed them. So you are a facilitator for them not making the U-turn, because they believe there's no U-turns on Allah's path. so long as you are breathing, and that is a great lie against Allah Ta'ala. So let us be extremely careful what we are saying, that no, there's no need to shame people in public. There's no need to take names of people. But today, unfortunately, we go to the extent of really going out of our way to follow, to curiously search every action, every speech of people, and then make it public, make it viral, and then go about criticizing that without actually sitting with the person that might have said something, that might have meant something, yet we are not willing to sit down with people, discuss the issues that is perhaps concerning to us, and discuss those evils. And we go onto social media and we try people on social media.
Very, very true, Ma. Jazakallah for that very beautiful explanation. Manat, gave a very detailed explanation looking at what is mentioned in the Quran, the public flogging that is mentioned there, and Manana related it and explained to us how it is different from this public punishment, the public shaming that we do today, something totally different from what has been advocated in the Quran, and the beautiful way in which Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam handled those matters in those times. And in today's time, there's obviously differences that takes place. There's things that happen. There are things that are said, but there's obviously you want to take the person to trial. You want to hold the person to account for what they have done, what they have said, but there is always a way of doing it. And Manana has very beautifully explained that. Man, there's a comment from a listener which Manana can maybe, it's not exactly a question, it's more a comment. Manana can add to it. It's maybe within a family where this takes place as well. So they say, Assalamu alaikum, excellent topic. The worst thing a parent can do is public shame their child. My mom always used to do it to me, especially in front of those who like me, until they thought I was a rude and arrogant person. By the way, she still does it because she loves playing victim in every situation. Please, parents, don't do this to your children and communicate with them. Jazakumullah.
Yes, Maulana, Jazakumullah for that comment. And as we said, this is a generic program. It's a general program. It's not specifically for matters of deen as such. It is generic. It is general in every way, and that is the topic that we are discussing. The gossip,
Right.
rumors. And if you go into our program from the first episode, it is covering a whole host of practices and the character that a Muslim should have.
Jazakallah for that, Ma. It's 25 minutes left to the hour of 10. What we'll do now is we'll break for the ad. We'll go for an ad break. And on the other side of that, we will continue with the program. To stay tuned.
Have you ever been to the Ahsan store? It's filled with the most incredible items you would most certainly adore. What's more is that they deliver directly to your door. Experts tailoring locally made from our finest fabrics in thobes. We even combine a shirt in a thobe, calling it a shobe. Our fine selection of fragrances for you, your home and car will transport your senses and fondest memories to places near and far. Give something better is what we say. But don't take our word for it. Please come our way. We're just a click away on ahsan.co.za, App Store or Google Play.
Craving the best quesadilla in South Africa? Head to Las Palmas Gateway, your 100% Sanha Halal certified family restaurant. Indulge in mouth-watering Mexican tacos and cuisine. Dine in or take away, celebrate events, special days, and catch us at food festivals. Can't make it? Order via Uber Eats or Mr. D. For catering inquiries, email gm@laspalmasza.com. Las Palmas Gateway, where Mexican flavor meets family.
Wrap it, pack it, fill it, close it, store it, pour it, throw it, zip it, sip it, or just stash it. You've got it. Stash Distributors for all your packaging and baking requirements. Stash Distributors, 6 Clear Road, Fordsburg, 011 492 0033.
Raising his middle finger and index finger, the Prophet ﷺ said, I and the person who looks after an orphan and provides for him will be in paradise like this. Partner with Gift of the Needy in bringing relief to widows and orphans locally and abroad. Our support to those most vulnerable is ongoing. Donate now to Gift of the Needy, an ulama-guided NGO. FNB, Gift of the Needy. Account number 626 046 33009. Donate online www.giftoftheneedy.com. Call 031 2713 Gift of the Needy, bringing ease to those in need.
Warmer days are here. The South Coast is calling you. It's time to pack your bags and treat yourself to a private beach house experience. A place that you can enjoy and relax with spectacular views of the ocean. Enjoy the sun, sea, sand, and take a refreshing dip in your private pool. Spacious and fully self-catering house, which accommodates for small and larger families. Book now and secure your spot for an unforgettable holiday by the beach. Contact 066 269 7786 or alternatively 071 334 8936, or visit our website seaparkbeachhouse.co.za, or visit our Instagram page at the Sea Park Beach House.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. أتدري من يجيب العبد أبد السوء.
The echo chambers of today: gossip, slander, backbiting, bickering, and a whole lot of infighting. Navigating the online space can be very confronting. Join Ml Zahier Ragie as we get into our topic, the echo chambers and the media wars. A half-truth is more dangerous than a full lie.
Okay, we welcome you back to the airwaves of Radio Islam International. 20 minutes left to the hour of 10. This is the program of Ml Zahier Ragie, Echo Chambers and the Media Wars that unfortunately is currently very prevalent in front of us today. Let's continue with the program. So, moving on now, the topic for today, we're speaking about trial by social media, and Maulana has spoken to us about public punishment of wrongdoing, shaming, etc., and how that impacts, not just the individual, but it impacts the entire community. And therefore, it's something that we need to be very, very, very careful and watchful over. Now, to continue with that, so just so people don't misunderstand the conversation that we're having, we've actually said that calling out people is a negative quality. But then the question comes that to what extent do we just allow things to happen before us? The important question, where do we draw the line? We got to reach a stage where we say, look, we're not going to call this out, but we have to call this out. So where do we then draw the line? Where do we say, no, we have to do something here? Obviously, as has been explained, judging by what Maulana has explained in the program, it's obviously a lot more praiseworthy to conceal, to hide, to avoid calling out people, etc., to avoid shaming people. There's great amount of benefit for it, but we need to know where to draw the line.
Yes, Maulana. But at what point do we say we are going to call out the evil? And there are conditions for that, and we've spoken some of the conditions in our past discussions. And for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, they may refer to that episode. I think it was episode 5 or 6 where we discussed at length. And there are any other conditions besides the ones that we have just mentioned. As mentioned earlier, there needs to be a justification that there is more good than evil. And as I tried to allude earlier, it should not just be an assumed justification. So there needs to be justification, but it's not an assumed justification when you are just actually following the herd effect of calling out shame. And unfortunately today, that is what is happening. There is this herd effect of just, calling out shame. And I would like to draw our attention in this to a statement of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, our beloved mother, regarding the gradual revelation of the Quran Kareem. And in it, there is a beautiful principle for us to draw. She says, she says, that the very first verses that came down in the Quran Kareem were the shorter surahs, basically half or 2/3 onwards, towards the end is probably what she's referring to. She says in it is contained a lot of mention of Jannah, paradise, and Jahannam. And that's what people really need. They don't need to be called out. A lot of people know what's wrong, and they still do what they know is wrong. This is in the cases where they are really going out and doing wrong. We're not talking of those aspects where there are differences of opinion based on, ijtihad. And we've mentioned that again, and I'll mention it here again. The statement of Imam Shafi alayhimur rahmah, that when reputable scholars differ based on ijtihad, then the different opinion cannot be called a munkar. It cannot be called an evil. So a lot of people know what's wrong, and they still do what is wrong. And we're talking of just genuine, those aspects which are genuinely known from the text that it is wrong. Because then the motivation, she said, a lot came down about Jannah and Jahannam. And she said that when people became inclined to Islam, that's when the halal and the haram, the do's and don'ts came down. And that was the theme and the approach that the Quran took. She then continues and says, look at this wisdom, the Quranic wisdom that she is appreciating here. Who? Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, our beloved mother. She continued to say in the same narration, and if the first thing to come down in the Quran was stop fornicating, people would have said, we will never stop to fornicate. And if the first thing to come down from the Quran was stop drinking alcohol, drinking wine, people would have said, we will never stop drinking wine. And this is so profound. So what you are calling out, let's think, what are we calling out? Why are we calling out? Is it to draw attention to yourself and your personal virtue and righteousness, to your particular channel and group, or is it actually to remedy the wrong? If it is to fix, if it is to remedy, then you want to remedy it. Calling out is not the way to fix. Calling out people is not the way to remedy. For most part, yes, Islam is about commanding good and forbidding evil. That's what Islam is about. Amr bil ma'roof, nahi anil munkar. But what is the proportionality of this? We need more promotion of good. What is commanding of good? It is about sort of increasing the good, flourishing the good. It incorporates teaching the good. It incorporates reminding about the good. It incorporates, and what I would call, Morana, and this maybe I need some explanation of this. I'll need to give an explanation of this. What I would call, it incorporates tough love as well, meaning incentivizing it with positive and negative reinforcements. And it's all of that. And and what I just mentioned, a broad principle. Many a times, a principle is better understood by an example. So let's share one or two profound examples from the beautiful seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, we are talking about calling out. If our purpose is to remedy it, it has to be done in appropriate manner. And sometimes the manners that we are adopting is not the appropriate manner. It may not even be the appropriate time. So let's share a very profound example. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam passes by the woman in the graveyard. And it's a very famous incident. We've heard it many times. We've also spoken about that on this program. The incident of Rasulullah and the wailing woman. And she was doing something that deserved to be called out. She was wailing at the grave, and so he said to her, and her wailing was a huge thing. It's like objecting to Allah potentially. And so he said to her, fear Allah and be patient, exhibit patience. So she didn't know who he was. At that moment of hers in her grief, she was unaware and did not realize that the person advising her was none other but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she did not know who he was. She was so immersed into her emotions, she was so hurt by her loss that she actually reacted negatively towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again unknowing who he was. And she said, just go away from me. You don't know what I'm going through. You are not going through what I'm going through. So someone without prophetic wisdom, without the prophetic wisdom that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam possessed, the highest wisdom. Rasulullah was an embodiment of hikmah, was an embodiment of prophetic wisdom. So someone without the prophetic wisdom could have been like, give her a mouthful negatively. And that's what we are doing today when we see something wrong. But what did he do? He walked away. He did not insist on continuing to call it out to her because she was not ready to hear it. And that's really what it's all about. Do you want someone to listen, or do you want to just have your say? Do you really want someone to be remedied, or you just want your say? And so the narration mentions, and look at this, look at the fruits of this. Now the narration mentions, when they actually mentioned to her, do you have any idea what you just did? You just told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam off. The narrator says, she ran to him as if the death of who she was waiting for had just disappeared. Like now she is the one coming. She is being receptive. I did not recognize you. So that's when she's coming. That's when you advise. And he said to her, when patience really counts is when calamity first strikes. So I'll actually share with our listeners one more very quickly. So this was one. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam realized that she was not in a right frame of mind to be spoken to about a virtue. And that's the wisdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So many a times when we call out the evil, when we shame people, let's sit back. Step back. What is my purpose here? Is my purpose to remedy the person that said or did something? In that case, let me find the appropriate approach, the appropriate time to go and talk to the person instead of just going on social media and trying people on social media. As I said, it's the most incoherent court. And so let me just mention one more incident. The incident of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and subhanallah, it's such a beautiful incident from which we can draw. The incident of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the enraged man, where a man in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was having a fit of rage, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, subhanallah, let us just observe here. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I know something that were he to say it, it would dispel this fury inside him. Now, let's just reflect here, Maulana. The man is in a fit of rage.
Right.
Rasulullah is not speaking to him directly. Subhanallah. Rasulullah is saying, I know of some words that if he says it, it would dispel his fury inside him. And then Rasulullah recited, the wordings that I'm referring to is, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Let's look at the actual hadith. A Sahabi narrates that I was sitting with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when two men began to quarrel and curse each other, and the face of one of them turned red, and the veins of his neck were swollen with rage. Rasulullah said, I know of a word. If he were to utter that, this rage would vanish, and that is, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge with Allah from shaitan the accursed. Now, interestingly, the companions, the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, said to him, to the person with rage, the Rasul tells you to utter A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Now, why did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam not tell him directly? He said, I know something, how his anger would be cooled, and not tell it to the person at that moment.
Subhanallah.
As we sometimes say, when we want to call out people, we say it's the truth, and the truth has to be told. Now look at the wisdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Rasulullah did not mention the wordings at that moment because he knew he was not in a position to hear it at that moment. In fact, some narrations say that one of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in was like, I'm going to that person and I'm going to tell him what Rasulullah said. So he goes to the Sahabi that was enraged and he says to him, Rasulullah says, the Sahabi went to that man and said, do you know what Rasulullah said? He said, I know of a word, if he were to utter that, his rage would vanish. And that is, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Subhanallah. You know what the man that had the rage said? Because he was still in that rage, he said, do you think I am mad? Do you think I am a shaitan? Think about what the scholar said. So he said, he knows something he didn't say. The same narration says the angered person actually got more upset. And he said, فَقَالَ الرَّجُلُ أَمَجْنُونًا تَرَانِي. The man said, do you think I am mad? Do you think I am a shaitan? Do you think I am a devil? Subhanallah. So that's the thing. What do you want? You want to push people further or you want to bring them closer? You are going to have to assess how much and how to do. And we learn from here, I'll conclude with this, the emotional intelligence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the field of rectifying wrong. The emotional intelligence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the field of da'wah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ability to understand the emotion of others, picking those moments, those special moments to give that, or understanding that every person requires a different approach. It's not the herd mentality that we are adopting today to call out the wrong. And how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, subhanallah, perfectly, most beautifully demonstrated that through these examples that I've just given. And I'm sure we can relate countless examples of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam understanding the person, understanding the moment. He was giving dawah in a manner that people would listen instead of running away from us. Yes, Maulana, Jazakallah. If you want to bring something, Maulana, as concluding remarks, or if there are any comments from our listeners or anything that we've said that was perhaps incorrect.
Jim, excellent advice, very, very pertinent, very, very, very beautiful. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us that we can act on these words of wisdom as Mana spoke very beautifully. Beautiful examples that Mana cited from the beautiful life of Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his emotional intelligence, how he responded to things, how he answered people, how he treated people, how he reacted to things and occasions and things that happened in front of him. I suppose that's why, it prompted even a Bedouin, even a villager, at the end had to say, "Ji'tukum min indi khairin nas," that I've come to you from the best of people, and that was none other than Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we will emulate, if we will copy, if we will replicate the life of Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people will be able to say very, closer things or beautiful things about us as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us. Why, if we just in a minute, if you can just 2 or 3 comments that have come through. Subhanallah, beautiful, excellent program by Ml Zahier Ragie, Jazakumullah khair. Then there's somebody that sent a message making dua for Shifa for Ml Muhammad Bam, Jazakallah for that as well. And then just something that Mona can maybe also just keep in mind. I will send it to Mona Muhammad Bam as well. But somebody says, lovely program as usual, alhamdulillah. Then it's not exactly on the topic, but they're actually suggesting if Mona could take this up as a topic and discuss it. They say, I'm seeing today's girls when they get married, they don't want to get married, ANC in anti-nuptial contract. They get married, community of property. Maybe Mona should speak about this sometime in the future and the harms of it.
Inshallah. We are going to have a program after this one of the days, inshallah, on marriage, talaq, fasakh, and inshallah we'll incorporate this in that program, inshallah.
Jazakallah so much, Muna. Jazakallah for giving us the opportunity of hosting you on the program. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. It was very, very informative and very, very interesting as well.
Jazakumullah. May Allah accept it. May Allah give us sincerity. And as we've always mentioned, we are the first addresses of these programs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Ml Zahier Ragie on the program Echo Chambers and Media Wars.